Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Black Expat Experience, a live show and podcast highlighting the lived experiences of Black expats around the world. I'm Kendall Tyson, your host, a licensed therapist and fellow Black expat. And we have another great episode in store for you today. I would like to welcome our newest guest, Jamaal. Hi, Jamaal.
Hey, how's it going, Kendall? And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having a good chat. And I haven't done anything like this before. So yeah, I mean, normally in an audio format, it's a lot more familiar, but the video is a little bit different. So
yeah, I love the nonverbals added to the conversation. So I'm very glad that you agreed to come on the show because this is something that you do for a living. You are a radio podcaster, all those things. So maybe that's why I've been a bit nervous and messing up all of the previous takes. Who knows?
it is all good. We all do it. It's part of the process. And
Yeah.
I may do it too. So yeah,
Right.
I'm
So,
glad you got some editing going on for this interview.
yes, thank goodness for editing, right? But I'd like to
Right.
introduce our audience to you by reading the amazing bio that you shared. So everyone, Jamaal Aziz, aka TJ Reid, is a podcaster, artist, radio host, editor, voice artist. I mean, you heard his voice already? It's very nice. A media professional in Beijing, China. Majoring in psychology at the University of California Merced. He initially wanted to pursue a career in medicine, but altered his career focus after traveling abroad to Thailand, Japan, and several other countries. Though currently working in media, psychology has still been a substantial influence in his life and other ventures such as teaching abroad, podcasting, and painting. I really appreciate the broad nature of your interests. So I want to get started in asking you, who would you say Jamaal is? If you had to describe Jamaal as a person, who would you describe yourself to be, other than what I just shared?
Other than what you just shared, okay. Jamaal Aziz is I'm trying to be careful with my words here.
You don't
Is
have to censor yourself.
just an individual that's on the path of perfection in the professional world, um, and in a spiritual element, and yeah, just trying to be a better and better person. So, and you're just constantly, growing and evolving and just trying to, yeah, to just stay on the path to perfection. I guess that's in summary. I think that's, because you listed off a lot of the other, you took, the wind out of my sails and a lot of these other descriptions of myself. So I think for that, if you move all of that away, I'm just somebody who's trying to be the best that they can be while I'm here.
I appreciate that, right? Evolving into your best self, and I would imagine that looks different on every day, right? What is evolution on a Monday? Self-evolution on a Wednesday looks very different than on a Sunday. So, what I hear with what you're saying is that you're being conscientious about continually making improvement.
Right. It's a big deal for me in my work and also just in life. Whether it's my spirituality, it's my physique, how how I relate to people and my people more specifically, and yeah, everything, just trying to be better and better, because I think there's a lot of things that can kind of there's a lot more negativity in life than positivity. I mean, obviously that depends on your mindset, but I think there's a lot of negativity out there to feed and grow and really, yeah, make you a less productive person.
I hear you. I hear you. Life can be full of ups and downs, challenges, distractions. So really identifying like what your focus is. And I
Mm.
kind of want to shift like the structure. Normally I talk about, an individual genesis into becoming an expat living abroad. And we'll definitely do that. But I would really like for you to expound upon, after reading your bio and knowing you as, the short time that I know that you do work around informing the public about different psychological matters through your own show, Shrink. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious for, because one of the elements of the work that this show does is identifies how one person uses his or her influence to better their community, to inform people, to, collaborate, bring connection. So I'd like you to give us, some background on how you got started with the show, Shrinks, what you want the mission and the purpose of it to be, and really how does it further your mission of the love of psychology?
Well, the show was kind of born when I decided that a lot of people that I work with and even family members just find it really comfortable to talk to me about things. And somehow, and maybe it's because I had a very eventful life, maybe it's because my major was in psychology. I've always had the words, at least, to explain and try to at least just share my experience, not really tell anyone what to do, but just what I've experienced in my life and what I've learned, and maybe giving people a different angle to see things. And it just felt so natural. And people would tell me that after talking with me, they feel like, they're a bit more equipped to go forward in whatever it is that they're struggling with. And it felt good, just like, wow, that must be some kind of gift or talent or something. And I and on the show, I do other shows with the current company I work with. And whenever it comes to, I'm really careful about the word advice. I don't really want to say I give people advice, but I just share my perspective, and it comes naturally. And then again, the feedback from the listeners on the show was always positive. So I thought, why don't I do something that's a bit more natural for me and talk about something that I think matters a lot more to me? And because I think there's a lot of things that are going on in life with people, some positive, but a lot of negative. And why don't we just talk about it? And I also feel that when you explain that you need to see a therapist or that you are seeing a psychologist, immediately um, people have a kind of a negative opinion about you. And I kind of wanted to change that a little bit, because I think sometimes all we need is someone to listen, someone to talk, and to uh, to get us to be able to handle, at least look at the situation a little bit differently. And so I thought, maybe why don't I do something closer along those lines? But I'm not a licensed psychologist. And at that time, I guess things just kind of fell into place. I was told that there was a former colleague where I currently work that's in the field of psychology, and he was excited about joining the show. And so I was like, you know what? Why don't I just, yeah, let's make this happen. But the first episode was with someone who wasn't a licensed therapist, so that was kind of a trial run. I thought it turned out okay, but it was a bit more, just an exchange between two people. It wasn't really anything that I think a lot of people could get anything from. But when I teamed up with a therapist, I think he had a lot more concise information that people could use, and obviously that stimulated my conversation with him a certain way, and it was just a better exchange, better product. So yeah, that's kind of how it started, and yeah, from there we've done about 12 episodes, and yeah, we're hoping to do more and more, especially before my time is done here.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the most important things that I hear you saying is being a conduit for people to be heard, to feel safe, to have an outlet to share. It's really important. And I don't think that someone can make themselves into that type of person. I honestly believe an individual has innate qualities that bring that skill out, right? For people to feel comfortable, trusting of you, to share some very deep and vulnerable parts of themselves. I think those kinds of skills and qualities are, a person's born with that, right? So I'm curious, what do you foresee the future of this show, the future of, the nature of your work to be beyond Beijing, if you choose to share?
Well, it's my mindset is if I'm able to get the collaboration that I need for the show, I would like to extend beyond China and go when I do go back to the States. I'd like to link up with people in my community and from different communities, really, because I mean we're all kind of going through similar things. I mean, of course, depending on the different conflicts, our communities suffer different, different issues, and so it would be kind of nice to sit with somebody from different representative communities and talk about some of those things. So I see there's a lot of potential in the show because as I mentioned before, a lot of people are struggling, especially these days with what's going on with economies and just climate and employment and just all kinds of things are happening. And I think it would be nice to hear a program where people are actually sharing these things, because most podcasts that I hear and I that are quite popular tend to be feel good programs or news programs. And not to say that Shrinked is a program that's kind of down and brings you down, but it's nice to hear just people disclose some real stuff that we're all going through, and then it's not necessarily positive. Some of them can be lighthearted. We have some people who share some lighthearted stories of what they're going through, but still involves psychology. But it's just nice to get a full spectrum of emotions on the program. And I think that can just go on and on. So when I go back home, I would like to link up with some other therapists. That way we can just sit and talk about these things. And as long as we have people willing to share what they're going through anonymously, that I think the show has potential and we could go on and on with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it will continue to grow. Yeah. Something that you just said when it comes to, the nature of the show, the content that's covered, what I appreciate is, and especially based off what you're saying, is that there's an honesty. There's more of an honesty to it as opposed to, we want someone to listen and it's just always upbeat, sunshine and roses, like, because to me that sometimes feels artificial.
Right.
And makes it challenging sometimes to connect, right, on a sub level to the lived experiences of other people. So yeah, I'm grateful for you putting work into the vision that you had and continuing to expound upon the work that you're doing. And I wonder, when we talk about like community, how can you foresee using this show as an outlet for others to be a resource for the communities that you are trying to serve?
Well, a lot of us tend to see things based off of what we're going through as a people. For example, a lot of here in China, a lot of them are oblivious to what's going on with people in the States. I'm African American, so a lot of times when I speak on certain things, they have no idea. And and it's not, and this is not specific to China or Chinese, but a lot of times people are not that concerned. about people from, communities outside of their own.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's nice to have programs where it's not something that it's a Black issue, or it's a Mexican issue, or if it's a Chinese issue or a white issue. It's something that we all deal with as human beings. And of course, those elements need to be there too, because those are factors that, contribute to mental health. But and so that's where I kind of would like to do, and that's why I like doing, I call it, quote, people programs, because I don't want to just take one narrative of one group and kind of propagate that. I want people from all races to be able to listen in and get something from it. So that's why I think if I'm able to get a different voice from different communities, then it's it's a voice, and people can try to understand a little bit more. May not always agree, or yeah, I think you're always going to have dissent in these kinds of conversations, but it's still good to to have a dialogue and talk and try to understand each other a little bit more.
I agree with that. I know when I came up with the premise of doing this show, the Black Expat Experience, I had to think about, would I be alienating other groups of races and ethnicities of people?
Yeah.
And, at one point I got a comment from someone that I know, she's Latino, and she shared, well, what about brown voices? And I shared with her, I was like, there's lots of brown people in the world that are experts in their own lived experience. I don't happen to be one of those people, right? I happen to be an expert in being a Black woman that chooses to live in another country. But I do, so I want to champion those voices, especially with the element of mental health, which is something that's really taboo in most communities of Black
Right.
communities and communities of color. But I really do believe that you don't have to be a Black person of the diaspora to engage in, being a part of someone sharing their experience, because you learn through it, right? You learn through their personal narrative. But I did want to offer like an intentional space, an open space, a safe space for people of our background all over the world to just chill and really talk about why they've chosen to venture into this space in their life, how mental health is impacted, and every other thing that comes up in the conversation. So
Yeah.
that's always been a consideration. But I'm also of the belief, if people want to learn, they will.
Yeah. That's right. And if you have platforms like this, it makes it a little bit easier as well.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, how long have you been abroad? How long have you been living as an expat?
Oh, wow.
That long?
Hold on, give me a minute. It just seems like a while. I left in 2012, so yeah, that's about a decade. It's
Wow.
10 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
10 years.
have you only been in China?
No, and when I say expat is living and working abroad. So I left in 2012 to go to South Korea, and I did that for 2 years. And then after that, I came to China, and I've been here since. So yeah, about
Okay.
7, coming up on 8 years in China, and yeah, 2 in South Korea.
Okay. And when you think about the inception of the idea, how about I go live in another country full time? How did you come to making this decision to become an expat?
Okay, let me wind my gears back to 2012. Uh, I think, well, I was in an industry that was exciting. I was in aviation, so so that was kind of cool. I was able to
Wow.
travel and jump on and off planes for free. And yeah, I was able to take my parents here and there, but I just fell in love with being abroad, because before that I had, I went to Thailand and I went to Japan, and it was just something about being abroad. The air smelled differently. And of course, the food is different. And it was just the culture, everything about it was just so different from back home. I don't want to say better, but just it was different. So, and I found that these 1 week or a week and a half trips just wasn't cutting it for me. It was, and I wanted to have the full experience. That's one element. And then I think another common reason was, I think I had just gotten out of a relationship. And so I was looking to kind of, get a change of scenery. And so, yeah, those two factors. And so I looked at South Korea because when I was teaching, when I left, I was an English teacher. That was kind of like the easiest role to leave America. You go abroad, and they pay for your housing, and they give you a decent salary, not an amazing salary, but it was decent enough. And so I was like, okay, this country and this country, I have to pay for my rent, but this place, they're going to cover my rent and give me a decent salary. Yeah, I'll go to South Korea.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the biggest reason I chose that place.
I wonder, which do you prefer, South, or not even prefer, right? Which country did you find you felt more connected to, South Korea or China?
Well, South Korea was the first time that I left and lived abroad. So there was there was a lot of adjustment that I had to go through at that time. But I liked South Korea because the food was, it took some getting used to. I have to be honest, but it was still quite, it was healthy, and the people are different than Chinese, and they're really, if they like you, they go out of their way to let you know that they like you. And if they don't like you, it's kind of the same. So you get used to that. I guess I was lucky. I got more people that liked me. So, that experience was more positive. And yeah, it was just the way that the country was kept. It was it was developed a bit more. So I preferred Korea. I mean, the Wi-Fi was amazing. I'll give you started on that. But yeah, great Wi-Fi. The people are great. The food is good. The way that the country, I mean, it's surrounded by hills, and it was a really beautiful place.
Yeah, it's on my
But
bucket
most
list.
importantly, I think they received Americans positively.
Oh, that matters.
And of course, there's some issues. There's always going to be some issues when you're Black and you're abroad. Okay, so I mean that's a separate discussion. But for
Right.
me, my personal experience of being abroad, there were some things that I had to get used to, and but after a while, when I got used to it, then the experience became more and more positive. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. There's always like an adjustment to being in new surroundings. I mean, just say even if you move to a new house down the street, there's an adjustment in feeling safe in a new space. So choosing to move to a new country as a Black individual, a Black American, yeah, there's an adjustment. There's like really having to get attuned to culture, if that's something that you want to do, language, new food, all these different nuances of how to show up and be. And that can be a lot to take in. And then couple that with the mental health implications of moving to another place, and how are you received? Is it positive? Are you able to build community?
Right.
There's so many things to encounter. That I sometimes wonder, people that have chosen to live abroad have to consider a lot. There's a lot of pre-consideration before making such an important leap. And
Yeah.
I want to ask you, when you kind of figured out, okay, I think I want to go here, what were some of the things that you considered as a Black American man moving to an Asian country?
Well, the biggest thing was, how am I received by the Asian community where I'm from? And traditionally, historically, uh, a lot of Asians don't really receive Black people in their communities. As a matter of fact, they keep a distance. And so, and I mean, in my parents' generation, a lot of them, and depending on the community, okay, it depends on where you're from, and some of the rougher areas where Asians live, their relations with Black people hasn't always been positive. So when I was like, hey, I'm gonna go to Korea, my parents were like, why would you do that? A lot of our experience with these Asian communities here in America hasn't been positive. So why would you go to their country? And so that was a big concern of mine. I was like, oh, well, that could be a problem if I go there and they, what if they're aggressive? What if they don't like, you know, Black people? Because I think that's something that a lot of us go abroad with this mindset, because historically Black people have been kind of second class citizens in our own country.
Right.
And so going somewhere else, is it going to be as bad? Is it going to be much worse? So these are some viable concerns that I had when I was leaving. So that was probably the biggest concern, honestly. From everything I've read about teaching abroad, most people leave largely the positive feedback of obviously the pay and the overall quality of life and all of that. But yeah, again, when you're Black, it's something that we've had to endure in America.
Yeah.
We're wondering, okay, how do these other people receive us? Because we don't get a lot of good, representation in media and movies and things
Right.
like that. So if they're looking at that, they may be thinking a lot of negative things when we come in. But yeah. I had to admit, in 2012, Barack was still in the office, so that was kind of a good thing. That was all over the world, people saw a Black man in the office
and loved it.
And loved it. And so it kind of lifted the face of Black people, I think, all over the world, especially in America. So, I tend to dress in ties, even though I didn't have to do that. That's just part of my demeanor. And so as soon as I stepped off of the plane, they were like, they had this feeling, because, appearance is a big deal for a lot of people. So when I went to work, this is who I was every day. And so I think they showed me with a lot of respect. And so did most of the people there did too. So
I'm really happy to hear that. With all the consideration, being again conscientious about making the move, it sounds to me, based off what you're sharing, that it's been a positive experience for you. I do want you to expound upon, if you choose, how, after sharing your thought process about where you're choosing to begin your expat journey, what did you have to tap into? What were some of the, ways in which you either countered, accepted, set boundaries around your decision, and other people, family, friends, not really agreeing or understanding your decision?
Well, I take China as an example for that, because there were those concerns that I mentioned before about Korea before I went there. And I realized that the Koreans in Korea were different than the Koreans in America, because when people get Americanized, they become completely different.
Yes.
But that, again, that's another topic. But
the proximity to the lighter hues.
Oh yeah.
changes their perception.
The dominant culture, I guess you can call it. Right. So a lot of people, I had a lot of feelings about coming to Korea, and I realized that most of them were inaccurate. When I had my own experience of living there, I was able to, make that distinction myself. So when I decided that I wanted to come to China, yeah, the whole world, my whole world rather, was like, why do you want to do that? Including Koreans. They were like, why do you want to do that? Don't do that. That's just stupid. They can't even breathe over there. And, the air is so bad. And it was just a lot of things. They were showing me news reports, and only negative news reports about China or in South Korea. Organ stealing, just abuse, and of course the government. All of that stuff was just, that was all they got in South Korea. And so yeah, I took a look at it and I was like, man, that's something to consider, you know. But I also kind of felt that I need to see it for myself because at that time I was a little bit more aware of how media portrays certain places, certain people. And again, China was a place that I was always interested in as a kid. I grew up on kung fu movies and this type of thing, martial arts. So it was something that I really wanted to experience. And also the pay for what I was doing was much more in China. And so that was also another motivator. But yeah, I was just realizing that not everything is exactly what is, portrayed in media. And so that's why I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and try it. If it doesn't work out, I'll just do a year and then I'll be on my way.
Yeah.
But at least I can say that I did it, and it's something that I can tell people from my personal experience that, yeah, this is right, or no, that wasn't quite, that wasn't right.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I really resonate with something that you just shared, that while you're getting all of these other people's perceptions, a lot of it negative information to try to sway you a certain way, making the understanding and having the realization that while all that's well and good, I know you probably mean well, I need to be able to experience this country, this opportunity for myself to get a real world perspective of what it's like. And it just really feels very much like being a Black person, right? Coming here. The negative perceptions, the inaccuracies. But once people really take the time to humanize us and get to know us as individuals, not as a collective, then they tend to see that whatever you've been fed isn't true, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
We are ambassadors, whether we like it or not, or know it or not.
Yes.
And that was something that I had to learn in my first, deployment, I guess you could call it. But yeah, but and I think that's another reason why I try to show people. I want people to kind of see a different element, because yeah, we don't get a lot of. Look at hip hop. It's all over the world. People love it. And when they see me, they sometimes, and there's comments that I get when I'm abroad, and back home, they would be considered a little bit racist, and they would set us off a lot back home. But here, you have to take it with a grain of salt, and you have to understand that a lot of them just literally, they don't know. There's not a lot of racism behind it. It's just ignorance.
Yeah.
Part of our work, I guess you could say, is to kind of let people know, give them some perspective, and hopefully that will change a little bit.
Yeah. It can be hard sometimes though, right? It's such a burden. It's such a heaviness to it, especially when you want to show up as your authentic self, or you want to display real human emotion in a moment. But then also realizing that we're literally being watched or on display where someone is creating, like their understanding is being shaped by their viewing of how we live our life. And that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. Like you said, just wanting to be a human and express yourself the way that everybody else expresses themselves
Right.
and all of that. But yeah, we have a bad rap that we have to clean up. And then it's not a rap that we gave ourselves, not necessarily. I mean, we have to take some responsibility for it, of course, but there's a hidden hand in that as well. And that's something that it's exhausting, and the playing field isn't fair. You have, I don't want to say the opposition. How do I say this? You have other people who, they have a lot, they're received a lot better because again, their work, their media, I say their media because it's not ours. And we shouldn't expect to get good representation from their media, but their
Right.
media gives them, an advantage, a privilege that, you know, yeah, it's not easy, but overall, again, I tend to highlight, the positives of the experience more so than the negatives. But then again, I can only speak for myself. There's others out there who may have had much more negative experiences than I
Right.
have, based off of their complexion. If they're darker, right? They may
Yeah.
have more problems if they're from another country, outside of America,
Right.
but they're black. They may have a lot more friction to deal with.
Yeah. Which
So
is
yeah, I
unfortunate.
can only speak for myself, but I know that's there, and it
Yeah.
ain't right.
Yeah. Yeah. While we may all be under the umbrella of being Black in China, those umbrellas have different elements, right? And those
Mhm.
different elements are different experiences, attitudes towards living in, this country, and just really having to have different ways of taking care of themselves depending on what it is that they're receiving from so many other people. And one of the things I'm interested in, I'm interested and curious about everything, honestly. When you think of the time that you, in this decade, that you've chosen to live outside of America, what do you think has been one of the most defining moments of your time abroad?
Defining. You have to excuse the sound. There's this apartment is a construction site, so if
Oh,
you
I
hear
barely
noise,
heard it.
I
I barely heard
apologize.
it.
Um, yeah, defining moment. Uh, I guess it was when I started working for this company. I mean, I don't know. I guess there's a few defining moments. I'm not really sure which element of definition you're asking. I guess on a professional level, it was when I started working, doing what I'm doing now. I got into media, and I realized that this was something that I wanted to do, and it it came a little bit easier, or a lot easier, being abroad than if I was back home.
Really?
And these are some of I feel like the opportunities, at least in China. No, I would extend that to a lot of these other countries that receive, foreigners. It's you do tend to have a little bit more opportunity to do things than the locals.
Mhm.
And so working for media I was able to tap into who I was as an individual and put that into my work. And so for me, I was like, wow, this is great. It's nice to fall into something that you feel is a lot more natural to you, who
Yeah.
you are as an individual. So I would say on a professional level, that would be kind of a defining moment for me. But just being abroad, um, I think when people compare me to certain figures or people that they've seen in media, and it used to bother me a lot. I didn't like that because, back home, we don't like when people say or compare us to this person, or you look like this person, even though you don't look anything like that person. They tell you, oh, you look like this person, or you remind me of this person.
Right. Like, yeah, all
Um,
Black people look alike. Like, no, we don't.
yeah, I got told that when I was in Korea, and I still remember this to this day. I'll never forget it. This guy said, like, oh, and he pointed at me and he said, MC Hammer.
What? Does he
And
have
yeah,
eyes?
exactly. Exactly. I was like,
Not
no,
MC
I
Hammer.
don't think I look like MC Hammer.
I mean, the MC Hammer is nice looking and he take care of himself, so I'll give you that. But
Hey,
okay.
hey, Hammer was the man back in the day. I can't deny that. But I mean, but at that time, it bothered me a little bit. But I think that when I was able to get past that and just realize that some people, when they make these comparisons, is because they like somebody from that culture, or maybe even they love somebody from that culture. NBA basketball players, I get that all the time. Even though
Yeah.
I'm like half the height of these guys, they'll tell me that I look like Kobe, or I look like this person or that person. But they really love Kobe. They love these
Yeah,
guys. Like they worship these
they
guys. And so
admire
when
them
they
for
see me,
sure.
I'm a reflection of that. So I guess when I came to that realization that, sometimes people are just showing love, but they just don't know how to do it. They don't know how to culturally, they don't know how to look into your culture and know what's appropriate. And that was a defining moment for me, because I felt like, there is actually some love that's being given out here. It's just done in a different way. And I just need to, you know, receive it, know it for what it is. And that will make my time here more positive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I really like how you just, I'm gonna reflect. What I hear is learning that what's the phrase? It's the phrase that I keep hearing. Um, especially at this new job, but it's supposing positive intention, right? From the start. Um, and then knowing that, yeah, they have limited exposure. And just really trying to take yourself out of it, remove whatever emotion and be like, okay, if it can be admiration. Now I think we know what it's like when somebody's like full on racist or intentionally being, you know, divisive, things of that nature, or irreverent. But in most
Yep.
cases, I'd say it's not that.
Most cases, yeah. You have racists too, but
Yes, lots of
there's
it.
not much you can do about that.
Well, let me ask you this. As a Black man from America who'll be venturing back home, or back to America, sooner or whatever point you choose, just knowing what you know now, knowing how your life has changed, how you've evolved as a person, I want you to kind of speak to that young man back home that has an opportunity like you had, right? To do something different, to step outside the box, really go on a personal journey. What could you offer to ease them into the decision of being different and just choosing to maybe start a life abroad? What would you say?
I would say that it's another form of a rite of passage,
Mm,
and I think an example of it is a really popular Hollywood film called what was it, 300?
mhm.
And at a certain point, these guys had to leave their homes, and they had to go for, I think, a few years and pretty much be on the brink of death, and sometimes they would die. But they had to kind of prove their their worth, or prove that they are worthy enough to be, a Spartan. And I think that when you come back with certain skills, you come back with a completely different way of thinking. And you yeah, it's a way that, suffering teaches us a lot of things. Of course, you can be bruised up, and you can take what you've received negatively, and it can kind of bring you grow downwards, you know. And I think that when you live abroad, of course, you learn a lot of things. For me, on a personal level, I feel like I see how well people work with each other in China. You know, they're a bit more uniform. And I would like to see a lot more of that in our people back in the United States. And of course, just dealing with the cultural differences and still being able to thrive. Yeah, I think I've learned a lot, and I would encourage, you know, our brothers and sisters back home, if they wanted to go abroad, it would be a good experience for them to see how people view us, and also just see what it's like in a different place, you know? And yeah, it's hard. As I mentioned earlier, everything smells differently, looks differently, and it's just a different slice of a huge pie. This is kind of an analogy, if you've only had one slice of pie, yeah, that pie might be good, but it's nice to try, if you can, have a few more slices. You can kind of see, you have a bigger or broader picture of what this world is like. And some people may move abroad and feel like, hey, this is it. I don't want to go back. And some people may feel like, wow, I really want to implement what they're doing here back home, because I see that a lot of Chinese, when they go abroad and they go to our institutions in America, they educate themselves, they learn whatever they can, and then they go back to their home country and they use that to build up their community and their
Yep.
people. And I feel that, I've developed quite a bit here since I've been in China, at least in the world of media, and um, on a personal level. And I think that I would like to try to use that to bring that home to our communities, and try to, so that I can, I guess, serve my community in some way when I go back home. I guess I've adopted that mindset, and that would have never happened if I hadn't left and got
Yeah.
this experience. You know what I mean? So yeah, I encourage people to go abroad if they can. And of course, you don't need to go abroad to have this mindset. But for me, it was just a way to see a different world, a different people, but also understand that and learn that though we're from different cultures and we speak different languages, we're still people. And I mean, really, well, there's only one tribe, there's only one people. And I think that it's kind of cool to be able to connect with our distant relatives. So, so yeah, I encourage it.
Yeah. I like all of that, especially the sentiment, not even sentiment, the fact. I mean, I work in a school, and so I know that families send their children to institutions of higher education in the United States and Canada, the UK, Australia, really want them to grow academically. Um, and there's beginning to become more of an emphasis on being a well person emotionally, right? In addition to get a degree that's going to allow you to get a good job where you're making, good money so you can come back and provide, right?
Yeah, right.
So I fully understand that. I even think that's kind of part of what I've envisioned. Like you just said, the skills that you've learned, you've grown more adept as a media individual, then to be able to take it back home and just allow that thing to expound and support the community that you serve is literally doing what they've done for decades, right? Um,
Right. Right.
yeah, so I appreciate that. And I could definitely see so much work being done to enlighten young people or whatever age group or subset of individuals that you choose to support through this work. Um, yeah, it feels very exciting to even hear and kind of envision what that could possibly look like. Um, I do want to ask you, um, And this kind of goes along I'm going to shift into mental health, right?
All right.
You have your podcast, Shrinks. You're really doing a lot in media. I am interested in, like, what is it about mental health, the educating of people about mental health, do you find to be so valuable and important?
Well, this other than the fact that it just appears to be quite natural for me to want to, um, speak with people and get them to open up about, what's bothering them and hopefully get them to, move forward with more positivity. Um, Recently, I mean, for a lot of the radio shows that I do, we have to look about, read online about what's going on, certain statistics and about what's going on in the world. Ever since COVID, there's been a lot of reports about people being a lot more stressed, young people, older people, of course, people losing work, and mental health is just, in a way, it's trying to come out of this negative stigma because before, and I think I mentioned this before, it's just something that not a lot of people like to talk about. And nowadays, with the current situation with economies here and in the States and everywhere, you have a lot of people that are struggling. The youth, at least here, they have this, they call it the laying flat generation, where a lot of these young people, they've given up. They don't want to work hard. They don't want to strive. They just want to enjoy their lives. They've given up on trying to be, what society wants them to be. And there's this kind of surrender. But of course, that comes with it some other problems, inside of the family and just, socially.
Yeah.
And then back home, we have just we have a lot of issues, a lot of problems. And I think that there's a stronger demand for mental health professionals, or at least an awareness that if you do need to see somebody and talk to somebody, it's just better that it's a lot more normal, and that it's not something that, oh, this person, you might want to watch that person, they're seeing a therapist, and I think at one time that was kind of the narrative. It's like, if
Yeah.
somebody's seeing a therapist, you got issues and you better watch it. And I think nowadays we could all use a therapist or somebody to sit down and talk to. So I guess it's just normalizing the notion of being able to chat and talk. And so that's really, where, at least at this point, that's where the focus of the show is about, and just letting everyone know that, you're going through things. Hey, so am I, and so is she. And let's talk about it. You know, there's nothing wrong with you. It's perfectly normal, actually. We all
Yeah.
go through different things.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I'll say yes 10 more times. When you say those things, I'm curious to hear when you think about your attitudes and understanding of mental health at this point in your life, and maybe the messages and the understanding and the unstated treatment of individuals with mental health that you grew up with, how would you say that has influenced your perspective to date?
Well, I have to be honest, I don't have a lot of exposure to mental health growing up. I don't know anyone in my family. Well, that's not true. Until recently, I have an older sister, but I mean, in my development as a child and growing up, maybe it was that generation or during that time, but it was still seen as a negative. So no one that I know personally um, went and saw someone. And I think the reason why I just found it so appealing, because largely, oh, can you still catch me? Or can you still read me? It says the internet is not stable. Can you
Yeah, I
still
can hear
hear
you.
me
It's
okay?
just, yeah, you're good.
Okay. Okay. Um, my exposure to it is largely, and I think for most people, it's probably has a lot to do with either your personal experiences, maybe someone in your life that needed some counseling, or it could be media, right? Films and film depictions. And for me, I was the latter. I saw a lot of film depictions of it, and I just thought that it was really captivating and interesting. And that was, as a young man, I wanted to go into, this type of work, largely from that. But as I, got trained and I took, some courses in it in college, it was just something that I felt that, wow, this is actually really useful. It's not only for the criminally insane, which is, again, a lot of media depictions is like, when you watch films, it's always people who are really extreme. But when I started to take classes, it taught you that this could work on a person to person level, just people who are, dealing with what some would say trivial things. But if not addressed, it could be something that could actually, get out of control. So, but growing up, there was not a lot of, I could say, not a lot of influence there. No one that I know of, at least. If they are, my dad would joke about taking lithium. To this day, I'm not sure if he was joking or if he was serious. You know, I don't think he was bipolar, but
But
I mean, I don't
that's a
know.
very
But
specific, right, type of
yeah, I know.
drug
But
that not many people would know
he's a
about.
doctor. He's a doctor. So
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know why he did that. But I've always grew up with that in my mind, like, oh, because he bipolar. Oh, I don't know. Um, but either way, I mean, and it was through an episode of Shrink, the program that I'm doing now, that I discover that even if you are bipolar, there's some magnificent people out there who
Yes.
have the condition and do exceptionally well in life.
Yeah,
And so it's not necessarily a negative thing. If it's managed well, then it could
exactly.
be actually a merit.
Right. When they have appropriate treatment, appropriate mental health support, ecological support, environmental support. That's
Mhm.
something I really want people to understand is that at some point in everyone's life, and I don't like to use absolutes, but it's pretty true, we'll all have some sort of experience with a mental health issue, be that anxiety, which is the number one diagnosed mental health condition, depression. There can be a prevalence of other more severe mental health issues that some people may experience, but with the appropriate support, with the appropriate treatment, dealing with a mental health struggle, living with a mental health struggle is not an indictment on your life and does not mean that you won't have a healthy quality of life. It's when we continue to propagate stereotype and negative stigma that makes it difficult for people to step out of the shadow of what they believe to be a problem, or at least what they've been told by said community, environment, society that's problematic, that they don't get the appropriate support in an expedient amount of time, and then things can become more challenging. So it takes a level of vulnerability. It's very difficult for people to tap into. And I want to ask you about that. What role do you see vulnerability playing in the advancement of, you know, mental health, especially as expats, right? Resources in certain countries can be sparse, and they are in China. So when you think of,
Yeah.
and obviously you're a Black male, so from the Black male perspective, I think it's even more important. How does vulnerability play a role in wellness?
Well, uh, If you have an issue or a problem, we have to be a bit vulnerable to get it solved or to get it fixed, because a lot of us like to handle things on our own. And I think that's largely because we don't want other people to know about it. And I also think, I don't know if it's a male or male complex, because I think there's some females that feel this way too, but being vulnerable is weak, being weak, putting yourself out there and, sharing all of these personal details, and it's and of course you're opening yourself to judgment from other people. Actually, it takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable,
Yes.
because I mean, nobody wants to do that, right? I mean, I certainly don't. I don't want people knowing about my personal life and, my shortcomings and things of that nature. Even though we all have them, you can pretend, we can hold on to the false bravado when we go to work or when we're in front of people, acting like we don't have these issues. It's just, it's strength that a lot of us are trying to uphold. But yeah, inside we're all weak, and so we have to, uh, yeah, at some point, like you mentioned, there's going to be times where we need some support. Some people find it in different places. If you're, of a certain religious faith, some people find their strength in, God or Allah, and I think that works for some people. But for others who may not have that spiritual sense, they might need a little bit more. They might need, yeah, a different angle of support. But it's vulnerability and it's being weak. And I think for males, and I've never seen a therapist before. I'm just telling you. I've gotten some training throughout my schooling. I know a couple of therapists, and we talk about things, and I think I talk and I'm able to share what's going on with myself. Sometimes some things, not everything, of course. Don't want to expose too much. Don't want to be too vulnerable, right?
Are you okay?
But but yeah, there's a certain amount of maybe it's the traditional element. I'm not sure, but there's some ladies out there that also don't like to expose themselves and be too vulnerable because it's synonymous with weakness. And I don't agree with that completely, but there is some part of that I also agree with too. And that's probably why I don't share literally everything about myself either, because yeah, it's not, I don't think it's safe,
So
right?
I'm glad that you said that. And I agree with almost everything that you said, right? When it comes to like
Almost.
vulnerability, the messaging that we get is, oh, you're weak, to be vulnerable, to cry, to share all these things. We know that's not true, right? I also know that people's experiences really influence their present behavior. And when they see certain things, or maybe have even reached out previously for support, maybe not explicitly, but then however you're received can push you right back into that shell, thereby stopping, right, your ability to get that support that you need. So it's really looking at it, how do I change? How do we change that association of strength and solitude? I can do it on my own, and open the world up to know that connection and vulnerability are the pathways to being well and healthy and thriving. And it was something else that you just said. I lost it in my whole thought about this, but just knowing that we all have differing experiences, and we get to kind of step outside of what we've been traditionally taught, when it comes to, mental health, seeking help, seeking support, safe. That's what you said. It just came back to me. one of the reasons like I like this show that I'm doing is that I believe it creates a sense of safety to be open. And anyone that follows me knows that you're not going to be chided or judged for the intimate things that you share with the world. It's through the sharing, it's through the sharing of our personal narrative, our experiences, that other people can see, oh, so you've experienced something similar to me and you're doing okay and you're doing well, or you've been able to come out of a situation. It's through that safety that people can be
Right.
vulnerable. So I'm always curious about, especially as expats, how do we create these pockets of safety, these communities of safety where one can be more open and get the maybe environmental support if they're not in a space to where they can one afford a private therapist, or maybe they're not ready for that step because it is a big leap. What do you think that looks like as expats, Black people living abroad, to be intentional about creating those safe communities?
Well, I think making programs like this and others that highlight mental health, and not even that, just having, I guess, functions and things that reach out to us as expats to come together, whether it's several times a year, or just a place where we can all just kind of hang out and talk. And I think that there's a lot of communities, or there are, I guess you could say, groups that are already doing that, where they have these events and people can kind of get together. But I think the focus should be on mental health and relaxes. If you set up a group or a function on drinking or partying, or this becomes the theme, and then if you go there, you don't feel safe to share anything negative, because you're going to feel like you're bringing down the mood, because the whole theme of this gathering is to party, it's to
Right.
feel good. So if as expats, if we're abroad, it would be good to have, and I think, as I mentioned, there's different groups, for example, like these yoga, or what's this? There's a different type of therapy. I don't really understand it so much, but it's called, it's not yoga, but it's like it's hard for me to remember exactly what it's called, but anyway, there's meditation involved, and they talk and they really kind of debrief each other. And this is and they do that several times a week, and this is also a form of release, where people
So
come
like
and they
group therapy,
share. And I've attended. It's not group therapy. It's I feel like yoga or Buddhism is the
sound
theme of
healing.
it, but not sound therapy. It's there's the Beijing awareness.
With the Mindfulness Center,
I can't remember. What is it?
the Beijing Mindfulness Center.
Mindfulness. There it is.
Oh, okay.
Mindfulness. That's what they call it. That's the term. It's called
Okay. So
mindfulness.
like a state of being.
And for
Right.
me, yeah, it's kind of like this a hybrid of Buddhism, a little bit of yoga, and there's psychology there, and they say these chants and different things, and that's helpful. I mean, it's something where people can get together and they can share what's going on in their lives, sometimes very, very personal stuff, but it's a release, and people can get it out, and they can share it with people that are there, and then that opens other people up to being vulnerable and sharing what's going on in their lives. Not everybody comes out and says anything, like I didn't when I said anything when I went there, but it at least creates a space for people that have something in their hearts that they need to share and get off, if somebody else is sharing something really close and intimate. So I think that these type of functions are really important. that way people can at least, being so far from home, being in a place that's not an English speaking country, to have these functions are really important, I think.
Yeah, yes, I agree with you. Creating a community or a culture surrounded around the importance of wellness and not for necessarily capitalistic means. Yes, people want to be paid for their
Yeah.
work, but more so to create the sense of community that's going to help to promote wellness, individual wellness, environmental wellness, collective wellness, because we need that as expats. I think it's one of the, like when people decide to move abroad, one of the things that I'm considering, when I work with other people is helping them to understand what is it going to look like for you in this new country to take care of your mental and physical wellness. That has to be an element of consideration before you choose to move somewhere, um, because you're going to be there and you're going to try to cultivate a life there. So how do you do that in the healthiest way possible? And in the event that you do experience a disruption in your life, what are the resources available for you to get your mental health needs tended to? Um, Honestly, I wish I would have done more of my own research before moving to China, because I was unpleasantly surprised by the lack of infrastructure when it comes to mental health support here in this country. It's not a poor country, but I understand the cultural implications of having that type of westernized, more westernized support. So it's always something to think about. I just have a few more questions before we close out. And one of those is, when you what do you need when it comes to healing?
Can you repeat that question?
What do you need when it comes to like healing, when it comes to taking care of yourself, when it comes
Mhm.
to tending to those hurt, maybe sick, maybe, I don't know another word, parts of yourself that need additional love and care? What does healing look like for you?
Well, I'm kind of going through something major right now.
Okay.
And what I do is I work out. This has always been something that has stuck with me for a long time, and it's always been helpful. Um, so yeah, fitness is something that I've used and it's worked. And I've done a little bit of research. I'm a an unofficial herbalist, so I research different herbs that are, balance hormones and, supposed to be good for, adaptogenic herbs. And so, yeah, some ashwagandha or, different things just kind of,
Yeah.
help the
Ashwagandha is
body.
really good.
Yeah, yeah. So just on this level. And then of course, fitness, and then just taking some time to be alone, maybe doing a little bit of reading and prayer. I pray quite a bit. So I think these elements have always gotten me through. And then also talking to family, my family, praise God, I've got a family that is supportive and very helpful. They give me my space, but also if I want to talk, then they're always there to listen, which is nice. So I think with those elements, I've been blessed to be able to get through most of the issues that have come up in life, and been able to take something, learn something from whatever I'm involved in or whatever has happened, and go forward in a positive way. So yeah,
Wonderful. Thank
but
you
I
for
realize
that.
not everybody has those resources,
Right.
so it can be harder for different people.
Right.
Some people when they hit a wall, they don't want to go to a gym and get on a treadmill or anything like that. But that's just how I'm hardwired. It's something that I've always done, and it's worked for me. So
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think the last question that I want to ask you is when you think about the advancement of mental health, holistic wellness in our community, what would you want to see? What would be a preferred future in that regard that you'd like?
Uh, well, I think we spoke about it a little bit in our discussion today, and again, it's just awareness, 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 and just getting our people to understand that there's not something wrong with you. You're not broken because you need to talk to somebody every once in a while. I think that this type of conversation can be empowering and help us to, to stay on a constructive path. I do a show. It's a lighthearted show, but we touch on the lives of very famous pop musicians. And there was one I just did recently that kind of reached out to me and grabbed a hold of my, and grabbed me from the inside. And it was just his story was just so compelling. He was born, he was a stillborn,
Mm,
and somehow he made it out of that. And he was born to really young parents, 16 years old. His mother was 16, his father was 22. It was in the South. It was in the 30s, 1930s, Great Depression. His father was abusive, almost killed his mother, and would beat him every day. And eventually he had to leave and go live with his aunt, but his aunt, she ran a brothel, and so he had to
that's Little
entertain the
Richard,
guests. Sounds similar, but not Little Richard.
James Brown.
James Brown, that's right.
Okay.
Yes, and yeah, he just, I mean, when you look at the life that some of these guys live, and I think that it's like they were born to lose, but somehow they were able to make it. And I think they would have been able to probably have gone further and been able to have healthier relations with people had they just sat down and talked to somebody about some of the things that they've experienced. Because I mean, that's a nightmare. I mean, just the little bit that I told you, that's a rough start. And some people, and that can affect, and sometimes if that's not addressed, the cycle of abuse carries out later on in their lives. And that was the case, unfortunately, for James
Right.
Brown. Also, if I think that a lot of this happens in our communities, unfortunately. And if yeah, we're able to talk to some people that can help, then it might be a lot easier for us because yeah, our communities, or our community, more specifically the Black community, we have a lot of barriers in America today, you know. So I think that our work, we could, our community could use this work a lot more,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So it really is a service.
Yeah. There's just one thing I want to add, I'd like to add to that is in our communities, especially back home, we have a lot to contend with. And a lot of it is,
Mm,
most of it is not because of our failings as a people. A lot of it we know is systemic, but I think, and we bear responsibility for a lot of other things, right? I also think that we have to understand that when it comes to healing and taking responsibility for how we respond to things, that's completely in our own purview. And I would really appreciate if we could do more communal based things to provide healing spaces and resources, for our community, which all over the country, people are doing that. I just wonder what does it look like to be more of a national effort when it comes to the advancement of the promotion of like mental health, community health, wellness, collectivist programs for our own, people. We have it in pockets, So I just I don't know. I know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm saying. It's it's kind of hard to articulate what I know I'm trying to say right now, just to piggyback off of what you just said.
Yeah, no, it's tough. As you mentioned, we do have a lot more to contend with. And then here in China, at least here, they're a lot more uniform and they can address things in a certain way. If the government feels that, hey, this is a problem, they snap their fingers and the next day a policy rolls out
Yeah,
and it changes the narrative very
yeah,
quickly and people just follow suit. And it's not like that in America. The people are going to kick and scream. They're going to fight if it doesn't benefit their racial group. And again, it's always down to race in America because that's
yeah.
what it
Oh,
always
yeah.
was in the beginning.
A country
And
founded on race
so,
can't extrapolate race from anything.
exactly. And the country was never really set up for Black and brown. So that's another issue. So that's probably the biggest barrier of our advancement as a nation and as a people. I think a lot of times, and this might be deviating a little bit, but it's still related. But I think a lot of us have this notion of us thriving or striving and looking and trying to move forward together, all of us. And ideally, that's the way it should be. But the reality is,
It
it's
won't
it's
be
just
that.
it's not happening. It ain't gonna
Yeah.
happen. So I think we need to turn inward because I feel like other communities are already doing it. We're kind of it's harder for us because of our conditioning over the past 400 years has been we've been conditioned to kind of you know every person for themselves kind of mentality, and that's something that needs to die. And
Mm,
once we start looking at each other as family, as brother and sister, as people that looking after our own and loving our own, we have to undo this I feel like self-hate. We need to undo
mm,
that, and then once we undo that, and it's happening. I feel like it's slow, but it's happening.
I agree.
And once that knowledge is out there, then we can begin to repair ourselves. We can't look for somebody else, the government or any other, to implement mental health or any other service for us, because that's not in their interest, never has been, never will be. So once we accept that, then we need to take things into our own hands, and I think we'll be all right. And I think that the program that you're doing right now, and shrinked, God willing, if we are able to continue with it, more and more episodes, then I think that these type of shows is kind of a way to mentor, to our people. And yeah, I think that's how it starts. It's just turning inward, having people that want our people that want to do for our people. It shouldn't be that way, but that's kind of the way it has to be for now until we have a more collectivist spirit
Yeah.
in the country we call America.
Yeah. Other people have done it forever. So
Mm.
I don't have a problem with us being next at all. But I am so grateful for you taking time on your Sunday to share with us your innermost thoughts and experiences when it comes to mental health. Um, and I'm certain that you're going to continue to further the work that you're doing with Strength and all the media initiatives that you have. And of course, I will support you in your efforts. And for everyone that is watching, I want to thank you again for tuning into the Black Expat Experience. I encourage you to keep taking risks. I encourage you to keep impacting your communities. And above all, make sure that you prioritize your mental health. It is because of you that we are able to continue to grow this message of prioritization of mental and physical health, and letting the world know that Black people of the diaspora thrive and exist all over the world. So thank you. Please share this in your communities. And with that, I want to say, have a good day.
All
Bye.
right. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show, and yeah, take it easy. We'll
You
be in touch.
too. Thank you.